Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to the channel. UFC 288 Aljamain Sterling versus Henry Cejudo just ended, and this is going to be my UFC 288 post-fight. I'm mainly going to discuss the main and co-main event, but I'll also briefly discuss the notable fights on UFC 288. Starting off with the main event, we have Aljamain Sterling defending his bantamweight title against Henry Cejudo. He wins via split decision. Two judges gave it to him 48-47, and one judge gave it to Henry Cejudo 48-47. And we're going to talk about those judges' scorecards in a second. But how did I personally score the fight? Round one was a close round. Henry Cejudo got an early takedown. It looked like, okay, Henry Cejudo just easily clinched up with Aljamain Sterling, took him to the ground. And it looked like, okay, is Henry Cejudo going to dominate this fight with his wrestling somehow? Aljamain Sterling works his way back to his feet. They end up striking. It's a close round. Towards the end of the round, Aljo gets a takedown, starts landing some knees to the body, almost gets the back. And then at the tail end of the first round, they're kind of like in a clinch position where Henry's on the ground. I think he's on like one knee. Aljo throws a big elbow, landing it to end the round. And I really thought that finishing sequence won Aljamain Sterling the round. He landed some leg kicks in this round. He landed some other like really small strikes. I thought it won him the round. Henry Cejudo landed some okay strikes in this round, but I thought Henry Cejudo, even though he got a takedown, he didn't land any damage with the takedown. Aljamain Sterling got the takedown, did some damage, knees to the body, elbow it to end the round. I thought round one was pretty clearly Aljo, but it was a close round. Round two. Round two, in my opinion, was a toss-up round. You had Henry Cejudo, he landed a head kick and a big right hand, but you had Aljamain Sterling landing leg kicks, pressuring nonstop. And this was such a close round. Both guys landed decent shots in this round. I honestly didn't know who to give this round to, but I thought just Aljamain Sterling maybe just barely edged it. So live, I thought it was 50-50. I thought it was a toss-up round, and I just barely said, okay, Sterling probably got it. He did more damage with those leg kicks. But I thought round two could go either way. Round three, Henry Cejudo was landing good shots. It looked like Henry Cejudo was starting to come on strong. His corner was telling him, you need these next three rounds. He was landing good shots. Aljamain Sterling, as he's being pressured by Henry Cejudo, because Henry Cejudo started picking up the pace in the third round, he started to shoot in on sloppy takedowns. And then Henry Cejudo would get like the front headlock position, control Aljamain Sterling for a little bit, but not be able to do anything with it. And then in the third round, you had Aljamain Sterling off those sloppy shots, just waiting there to get illegally kneed in the head. I swear, he was on all fours, basically just going like this repeatedly in the third round. It was an embarrassing round for Aljamain Sterling. And Henry Cejudo, I thought, landed the better shots, defended the takedowns. I think towards the end of the round is when you had a takedown by Aljamain Sterling and got a hook in, but really wasn't able to do anything to it. Cejudo got back to the feet. I thought round three was a clear Cejudo round. Round four. This was a very close round. You had Sterling, more forward pressure, landing some kicks, less sloppy takedowns, even though I think he shot on a couple. You had Cejudo landing some good shots. But then towards the end, you had a takedown by Aljamain Sterling and landed some good shots after the takedown. Henry was able to get up. But I thought the round was kind of 50-50. The finishing sequence, the last minute of the round, I thought Aljamain Sterling stole the round. So round four, I had it for Aljamain Sterling. Round five was competitive, but I thought one of the clearest rounds of the fight. Henry Cejudo was pressuring nonstop, landing good shots, got a takedown at the end. The pressure was nonstop in the fifth round from Henry Cejudo. He was clinching up. He was landing knees to the body in the clinch. Round five was clearly Henry Cejudo. So based off of my scoring, 48-47 for Aljamain Sterling, but I thought that second round really could have went either way. I just barely edged Aljamain Sterling just because I just thought maybe he did a little bit more damage with the leg kicks. I have to go back and rewatch it. I'm going to go back and do a full rewatch, and then I'm going to do a video, was Henry Cejudo robbed at UFC 288? But let's be honest. This was a very close fight. On my live scoring, I give Aljamain Sterling round one, round two, and round four, with round two being very close. I think round three and round five were clear Henry Cejudo rounds. And this was a fight. Actually, before we get into, how each guy performed, the judges' scorecards. We have an abomination of the judges' scorecards. Derek Cleary, horrible scorecard. So let's start with Michael Bell. He scored round 1 and round 4 for Aljamain Sterling. He gave the fight to Henry Cejudo 48-47, giving him rounds 2, 3, and 5. I think that's an acceptable scorecard. 3 and 5 were clearly Henry Cejudo's. 2 was a toss-up. Could have went to Henry Cejudo. I have no problem with Michael Bell's scorecard. Then you get to Eric Colin, I think is how you pronounce his name. He had it 48-47 for Sterling. He gave Sterling rounds 1, 2, and 4. Fine scorecard, gives Cejudo rounds 3 and 5. That's a perfectly fine scorecard from Eric. Then you have Derek Clearly. Needs to be fired immediately. Before he's fired, he needs to be smacked upside the head with a shillelagh and put in a Boston Crab. Because he gave the fight 48-47 to Aljamain Sterling, which I believe is the correct scorecard. But he gave rounds 1 and round 4 and round 5 to Aljamain Sterling. And round 2 and 3 to Henry Cejudo. How do you give round 5 to Aljamain Sterling? That is a horrible scorecard. In no universe is round 5 Aljamain Sterling. It was a clear Henry Cejudo round, arguably the clearest round of the fight. I don't know how you do that. And, I have no problem with him giving Cejudo 2 and 3, but giving Aljo round 5, and based on that, you flip that properly where round 5 should have been Cejudo's. Based on Clearly's scorecard now, essentially you have a scenario where Henry Cejudo arguably should have got the split decision. Because round 5 is unexplainable. It's indefensible. It's egregious. It's a horrific scorecard. Derek needs to be smacked. And these judges just consistently turn in these terrible scorecards, and there's no accountability. They're never held accountable. And Derek Clearly, disgusting scorecard. I had to highlight that. I don't know how you give round 5 to anyone but Henry Cejudo. But how did they look? To be honest, from my personal, opinion on this fight as a whole, it was an underwhelming performance by both guys. I don't think it was a terrible fight. It's not like I'm sitting here and saying, oh, this was the worst fight ever by any means. But I just think for the most talent-rich division, to have, Aljamain Sterling on all fours, on a horrible look, horrible optics. Thank God Matt Serra yelled at him for it. It looked terrible. What I saw in this fight was, an Aljamain Sterling who had some success with the grappling, got a takedown here and there, and it may have sealed some certain rounds. Round 4, it may have sealed the round for him. The grappling in round 1, and then he would inevitably landed some knees off the takedown against the fence, and then an elbow basically off the takedown against the fence. I think the grappling kind of won this fight for Sterling, but the story of this fight was the leg kicks. Leg kicks of Aljamain Sterling. He was landing leg kicks at will, constantly chopping Henry Cejudo's leg. And also the story of this fight was whoever was moving forward, who was ever putting forward pressure was winning this fight. Because Henry Cejudo was pressuring Aljamain Sterling. Sterling was shooting on sloppy, I don't want to call them desperation shots, but that's basically what they look like. And Cejudo, when he was pressing forward and Aljo would shoot on these sloppy takedowns, Henry Cejudo was easily defending them. So this was one of those fights where I think both guys kind of underperformed. And, Henry Cejudo, he sat out for 3 years. Was that, people are talking about Francis Ngannou made this massive mistake not re-signing with the UFC. Henry Cejudo retiring at 33 years old, then coming back at 36 with a 3-year layoff, ring rust. How does that all come into play? I just think, Henry Cejudo's performance tonight was underwhelming. And I'm not saying either guy performed terribly, but Henry just didn't have that aggressive style similar to what he did to Marlon Moraes in that 3rd round. And had he been able to pressure more, I think he would have won this fight. And had he been able to, in those couple instances where Aljo shot in on a takedown and is really looking to drag Henry down, and then getting one hook in up against the fence, and then landing a couple knees to the body on the way up, and those moments just sealed the fight for Aljamain Sterling. And Henry Cejudo, he fought well when he pressured. He did not fight well when he backed up. He had an inability to check kicks for the majority of the fight. He landed some good body kicks throughout the fight. Landed the one good head kick. But what I saw in this fight was a Henry Cejudo who's 36 years old, who looked pretty good against Aljamain Sterling, but he just didn't have the killer instinct. And also, if you take 2 fighters of the exact same skill level and you give one of them a size advantage, the one with the size advantage is going to come out on top. And I think Sterling had a massive size advantage. I thought Henry, he could have won this fight. He could have got 2, 3, and 5. He could have gotten that. He didn't get it. And honestly, I felt like he could have done more. His stamina was on point. It's not like he faded. Aljamain Sterling, I thought, started to fade more than Henry Cejudo. So the gas tank for Henry looked good. I just think round 5, he should have been more urgent in round 4 in the same way he fought in round 5, and he would have won this fight. So I don't think Henry Cejudo is like completely washed by any means, but inability to kind of have those big impactful moments, and then also the size disadvantage. You know, I think Aljo has a power and size advantage. And also because the size advantage of Sterling, when Henry would land big shots, it was like Sterling would eat him and just walk through him, and it really wouldn't. Like, there was times that I thought, okay, that head kick's going to wobble Sterling. And he just wasn't, you know. Cejudo looked good in the clinch, even though Sterling was bigger. Cejudo looked very good. He looked very good defending takedowns when he really didn't, you know, especially when he was moving forward. You know, there were some scrambles created, but never at one point did Sterling, like, control Henry Cejudo on the ground for any extended period of time. There was a couple times where it looked like, okay, Aljo's going to take his back here. In the first round, it looked like he was going to. Kind of had one hook in up against the cage. Henry Cejudo did an excellent job defending that. He had good straight shots. He was landing the straight right. He was pumping the jab. He was landing some good kicks of his own, leg kicks and body kicks. But he just didn't have any big moments. There was a lot of clinch work, a lot of knees in the clinch. And a lot of times where he was up against the fence trying to defend. There was one moment where he was doing a split in the cage, and Aljamain Sterling was able to get the takedown there. It was just those moments in a very close fight. I know we say takedowns don't mean anything if you don't do damage. In a very close fight, those can be the deciding factor. And, you know, anybody calling this fight a robbery is just biased, in my opinion. This was not a robbery. I'm going to go back and rewatch it, and I'll give you my opinion when I revisit it. But we have to stop, and when I say we, I mean the MMA community, because I very rarely call a fight a robbery. We have to stop calling every fight that you don't like the decision of a robbery. It's just not the case. This was a close competitive fight. If Henry Cejudo would have won, it wouldn't have been a robbery. Aljamain Sterling ultimately got the decision. It was not a robbery. I do understand the scorecards kind of muddy the waters a little bit because one of those scorecards was terrible and one of those rounds was blatantly wrong. So in that case, it was, you know, I don't know. It wasn't a robbery, but you get my point. In that case, you can say, okay, well, you flipped this one round, which was egregious to score this way. Then it would have went Cejudo's way. You know, it's just unfortunate. But that's the way it goes in MMA. You know, it happens all the time, especially when you're in New Jersey. You have these horrible commissions with these horrible refs and these horrible judges. You know, and John Anik kept calling this one ref. I forgot his name. Kept calling him like a favorite referee. Guy's horrible. Guy's horrible. Don't even want to get into that right now. But Cejudo lost the fight. Aljamain Sterling gets it done. 48-47. I have no problem with the decision. He was able to do it mainly with his kicks. Landing those leg kicks repeatedly. And, you know, there was moments in this fight where Aljamain Sterling really didn't look particularly great, especially when he was on the all fours, shooting on sloppy takedowns. But he got the job done. He did what he needed to do. And, you know, I've been a person who hasn't shown Sterling the respect that he deserves. And I understand this fight, you can kind of do the same thing where you can kind of say, you know, okay, well Cejudo could have won. And, you know, maybe you give the fight to Cejudo and you delegitimize Aljo's win again. But we have to start giving him some respect. Even if you thought he lost the second Petr Yan fight. It was a close fight. And even to be competitive with Petr Yan is solid. And a lot of people think he won that fight, but it was a very close fight. Even if you thought he lost this fight, very competitive with Henry Cejudo. The win over TJ Dillashaw, that's TJ Dillashaw's fault. That's not Aljamain Sterling's. We have to start giving Aljamain Sterling respect. I got to start doing it more myself as well. It's an ugly style. It's an ugly style. It's funky striking. He's really good once he gets on the back, but the striking doesn't look particularly good. The grappling and the wrestling and the entries don't look particularly good. But it doesn't matter if it looks good. If it's effective, if it wins fights, that's all that matters. So Aljamain Sterling, one of the best in the world, gets it done against Henry Cejudo. What's next? And I'm going to make more videos discussing this. We have the post-fight antics between Aljamain Sterling and Sean O'Malley. They bring Sean O'Malley into the cage looking like a creative character off GTA. They square off. Merab takes his coat. Sean O'Malley actually hands him his coat, doesn't even realize it. Merab puts it on. That's the best moment of the night, in my opinion. Merab wearing Sean O'Malley's coat was hilarious. And, you know, to be honest, and this is a topic for another video I'm going to make, I don't think Sean O'Malley deserves a title shot. He beat Petr Yan. It was a robbery win. It was a robbery win. He did not deserve to win that fight. But it's going to be a fun fight. Supposedly it's going to happen in August or September. The UFC, Dana White, says they want it to happen in August 19th. Who do I favor in that fight? I favor Aljo. I mean, if Jan's getting you down repeatedly, if Aljo gets O'Malley down the way Jan was able to, Aljo will prioritize control over damage, unlike Jan, who kind of led him up to land damage. I think Aljamain Sterling wins that fight, but as much as I think a lot of people are going to say, oh, Aljamain Sterling, easy win. As much as Aljo has the grappling advantage, the reverse is true for Sean O'Malley. He has the striking advantage. And for me personally, I don't like Henry Cejudo. I don't really like Aljamain Sterling. People say I don't like Sean O'Malley. I will be rooting for Sean O'Malley against Aljamain Sterling. Breaking news right here on this post-fight video. I will be rooting for Sean O'Malley against Aljamain Sterling. But we have to start giving Aljo some respect. Early prediction is Aljamain Sterling. We're going to talk about that fight in future videos. Let's move on to the co-main event. Gilbert Burns versus Belal Muhammad. And I picked Belal in this fight. By the way, I picked Henry Cejudo in the main event. I was wrong on that. I think I said that early in the breakdown, but just in case I didn't. I picked Belal in this fight. I thought Belal had better striking. I thought he had straighter punches. I think he had good kicks, and I think that was against a Burns who likes to throw looping hooks. I thought the grappling was going to cancel each other out. 50-45 for Belal. Belal dominated this fight. And it wasn't like a one-sided beatdown. It's not that it wasn't competitive. And you do have the injury that kind of clouds over the situation a little bit, but the first round, before Burns even got injured, he injured his shoulder on a takedown attempt. Belal was lighting him up. Good kicks to the body, good leg kicks. Burns was landing some good leg kicks as well. Belal was switching stances, landing good combinations with straight punches. Even hurt Burns a little bit with a jab in the first round. But you had a moment where Burns shot in on a takedown, got in on Belal's legs, kind of got him to a seated position. But as they fell, he landed on that left shoulder. Hurt the left shoulder. Wasn't able to throw the left hand. After he hurt the left shoulder, Burns just really wasn't there. He was kind of defeated. He was throwing right hands, but Belal was just working him over with body kicks and head kicks, and he was switching stances, and he was pressuring. When Belal was moving forward, he was landing good shots, good combinations, just constant body kicks. And then once he realized there was something going on with that arm, and even before that, he was just smashing head kicks into those arms, smashing body kicks into those arms. And it was affecting Gilbert Burns. He was good with the jab. He was good with the straight right. I thought the only round that was really close that you could have given to Burns is the second round. But I still think Belal won that round. It was razor close in that second round. But outside of that, the third round, Belal was landing good combinations, heavy body kicks. Burns was really throwing nothing in the third round. The fourth round, Burns landed two good right hands. He was, sometimes Belal would close the distance. Burns would throw a massive right hand. He landed two of them in the fourth round, but I don't think he won the round. Belal was landing head kicks, body kicks. And then the fifth round, you had Belal kind of coasting a little bit, throwing half-hearted combinations because Burns knew he was behind. Burns was kind of throwing that big right hand over and over and over again, looking to try to find a finish. But Belal went out there and got the job done, shown that he is ever improving. The grappling canceled each other out. Burns went for a couple takedowns, the one that injured him, and then he shot in on a couple other ones, but they were kind of half-hearted. And, it showed his injury to his arm when he was doing that because he would come up and kind of shake the arm out a little bit. And Belal got the job done, and I'll say the same thing I said about Aljamain Sterling. I know Belal is not the most likable fighter. Belal needs to get the credit that he deserves. He went out there and beat a Gilbert Burns on 2 weeks' notice. Belal Muhammad's coming off the couch, okay? Gilbert Burns, I know it was tough for him as well, but he just had a fight camp. He just fought Jorge Masvidal. And Belal Muhammad went out there and put on a striking clinic against Gilbert Burns, lighting him up with body kicks, lighting him up with head kicks, landing good combinations. It's not the prettiest striking, but he outstruck Gilbert Burns, I think, in every round. I don't trust the stats. I'm not even going to look at the stats. In my opinion, he outstruck him every single round. And Belal looked very good switching stances. His body kicks looked phenomenal. They were impactful. He landed good power shots, landed some good head kicks, even hurt Gilbert Burns in that first round with like a jab, I think it was. I thought Belal would find a finish, and after I saw the injury, I thought, okay, he's going to find that finish. I'm going to be right. But he wins a decision. I think it was 50-45 on two judges' scorecards, and then one judge had it 49, 46, which probably gave Burns the second round. And I think that's okay. That's not a bad scorecard by any means. But Belal needs to get the respect he deserves. Belal deserves a title shot over Colby Covington. 100% deserves a title shot over Colby Covington. Dana White has already came out and said, look, Belal's next. We will have Leon Edwards versus Colby Covington. Belal will be next. It's unfortunate Colby's getting a title shot over Belal, but it is what it is. You know, I wish Dana would just come out and say, look, Colby did us a favor. He did us a favor. He was going to step in. That's why we're giving him a title shot. But you have Belal on this long winning streak. He caps it off with a short notice, win over Gilbert Burns, who just looked pretty good against Jorge Masvidal. And now Colby's getting a title shot instead. I know people are lukewarm on that Leon Edwards versus Belal Muhammad fight since they already fought before, even though it ended in controversy. But Belal should get the credit he deserves. Joe Rogan, DC, were already trying to discredit him on commentary, talking repeatedly about the shoulder injury of Gilbert Burns. I don't think you can let that delegitimize this win. He was winning the fight before that. He looked good, and supposedly he came into this fight injured. A lot of people were speculating about the ankle injury. Belal came into this fight injured as well. I don't know if it was the ankle, but he did confirm that he was injured coming in this fight. Took it on 2 weeks' notice. Ramadan, the deck was stacked against Belal Muhammad in this fight, and he was able to pull it off, and I think he deserves a title shot. I'm happy to see him sit out and fight the winner of Leon Edwards versus Colby Covington. He's done more than enough to earn that shot, and I'm interested to see it. I know a lot of people are going to crap on Belal and say he's boring. I thought this was an exciting fight. I thought Belal looked good outside of the 5th round, which was a little bit lackluster and he was kind of coasting. I thought Belal looked good, and I think it was a very exciting fight. I think he deserves credit for how he looked in this fight against a guy like Gilbert Burns, who people are constantly elevating and saying, oh, he's a savage, he takes every fight, which he is. Gilbert Burns is a savage. He fought Khamzat Chimaev, incredible fight. He beat up Jorge Masvidal. But people are going to try to somehow delegitimize Belal in this fight. Belal Muhammad deserves credit here. And I'll be honest, Belal Muhammad beat Gilbert Burns more impressively than Gilbert Burns beat Jorge Masvidal. And I think that says it all. Moving down the card, we have Jéssica Andrade versus Yan Xiaonan. Yan Xiaonan with a first-round KO. Andrade was eating leg kicks early, eating a couple body shots early. She's just plotting forward, trying to chase Yan Xiaonan down. When you rely on your chin and your power for too long, you're going to get slept. And that's the second time this happened on this card. We'll talk about one of the other ones at the end of this video. But Andrade just tries to plot forward. I thought Yan Xiaonan could win this fight. I almost picked her in this fight. I picked Andrade to win. Andrade just plots forward. She follows people. She's not even really cutting them off. And she was eating leg kicks. She was rushing in. Yan clipped her up a couple times. But then it was Andrade kind of rushing in. Yan backing up. Then Yan stopped, planted, threw a massive right hand, dropped her badly, and finished her off with ground and pound. Great win for Yan Xiaonan. I believe we will see Weili Zhang versus Yan Xiaonan for the women's strawweight title. Great win for Yan. Striking looked incredible. And she went out there and got it done against Jéssica Andrade. I know this is, Andrade just lost to Erin Blanchfield, but that's a different weight class. Yan Xiaonan gets it done. I think she's an elite women's fighter. And I'm excited to see Weili Zhang versus Yan Xiaonan if that does in fact happen. It looked like we were getting Weili Zhang versus Amanda Lemos, but Yan didn't take a lot of damage. Yan could probably jump back in there relatively soon. She looked incredible. She looked fast. She looked athletic. She had good power. Who's knocking out Jéssica Andrade in the first round? I don't think that's ever happened. I'm not looking at it in front of me right now. I don't think that's ever happened. So Yan Xiaonan, credit to her. Good win. Moving down the card, we have a phenomenal fight. One of the best fights of the night, in my opinion. Movsar Evloev versus Diego Lopes. Movsar wins via decision. I thought he would win this fight via stoppage. Diego Lopes has fought some questionable competition in the past, to say the least. Dude's a top 15 fighter, in my opinion. He's the biggest winner, honestly, of UFC 288 because he just looked incredible against Movsar. He looked absolutely incredible. Even though he lost, he rocked Movsar early. Then Movsar, I think, took him down, was starting to land good ground and pound shots. And then all of a sudden you have Lopes looking for an armbar. Almost gets an armbar. Almost gets a triangle at the end. Now, I do believe that the shots that Movsar landed with the ground and pound probably won him the first round. But I think there is an argument, and I would even be sympathetic to the argument of giving Lopes round one just because he hurt him. Then he had 2 submission attempts, the armbar being very close. But Movsar landed some good ground and pound in between there. But Lopes, shout out to Lopes. He came game, ready to fight on like 3 days notice, 4 days notice, stepped in. UFC debut against number 10 in the UFC rankings. Incredible performance. Second round, there were some early shots that, you had Lopes land, but then you had a takedown from Evloev and then just beat him up for most of the round. Clear second round for Movsar, but Lopes was still trying to scramble. He looked a little bit more defeated. He was kind of trying to scramble, look to set up submissions, never got close to one. Got beat up badly in the second round. Looked like he was starting to fade, but then in the third, it looked like he caught a second win, came out, landed some shots, got taken down, got back up. Movsar had like a back body lock. He was then setting up Kimuras, and even at one point had Movsar a little bit in trouble with the Kimura. Movsar had to kind of almost give up top position, flip over. There was a weird scramble, but then Movsar got back on top, landed some ground and pound. And then at the end of the third round, you had a knee bar attempt from Lopes, which was very close. It looked like he had it locked in. I don't know. Movsar really wasn't grimacing or anything. He was just kind of waiting it out. But I gave all 3 rounds to Movsar, but round 1 could have went to Lopes. I think 2 and 3 were clearly Movsar. He did more damage. I know you had the knee bar attempt, the Kimura attempt in the third round. I don't think that was enough to, overshadow the damage that Movsar did in the ground and pound. At one point in the third round, he had him stacked and just smashing him with ground and pound. I think he clearly won the third round, but Lopes came game to fight on short notice. Incredible fight, one of the best fights of the night. Against a guy I'm very high on, Movsar Evloev. But I think a lot of people are going to bury Evloev for the performance. People forget he stepped in on like 2 weeks' notice to fight Bryce Mitchell, maybe 3 weeks' notice to fight Bryce Mitchell. He wasn't supposed to be on this card. He stepped in on short notice, then Bryce pulled out. Then they still wanted to keep Movsar on the card, so they got Lopes. Lopes made his UFC debut. Incredible UFC debut. I think he has a bright future. Hands look crisp, boxing look crisp. Evloev, even though he won, I think a lot of people are going to kind of be questioning where he sits in the featherweight division. But I don't think this is an accurate depiction of how Movsar Evloev really truly looks coming in on short notice, last minute opponent switch. His grappling looked good. His submission defense looked good. His power looked good. His striking looked all right. His defensive striking definitely needs some work. His cardio looked good, especially for short notice. Neither guy was really tired in the third round. And I don't think you can take a whole lot away from Evloev because he did step on short notice. I think both guys have bright futures. Lopes, honestly, is the winner of the night. Moving down the card to my least favorite fight on the card, Charles Jourdain versus Kron Gracie. You had Kron Gracie dragging his ass all over the cage like a dog drags its ass on the carpet. Shameful performance by Kron Gracie. Cut him immediately. CM Punk would beat him up. He pulled guard a couple times, never went for a sub. I know he was trying to set up a sub, never went for a sub. Charles Jourdain was lighting him up on the feet. Kron Gracie, I want to make a joke and say Kron Gracie trains striking with Juliana Pena. Juliana Pena looks like Floyd Mayweather in his prime compared to Kron Gracie. So I'm not even going to make that joke. He looked horrible, a lot of ass dragging, no real submission attempts, no trouble for Charles Jourdain, constantly pulling guard. Wasn't able to find anything. Charles Jourdain would land some ground and pound. The second Kron opened up his guard, he was out of there. So, horrible performance for Kron. Cut him from the organization. Dude sat out for 3 years. I don't know what he did for 3 years. Maybe he just practiced dragging his ass against the carpet. I don't know. Horrible performance. Embarrassing performance. And this is what happened when this is what happens when guys get elevated off their last name or off their training partners. I've seen it time and time again. Blood Diamond got elevated. Oh, he trains with Izzy in his camp. Look how he looked in the UFC. Didn't look good. Kron Gracie always got the Gracie last name. Dude just got worked by Charles Jourdain, who was nowhere close to the elite of the elite in the division. Kron Gracie, retire from the sport. Go back to jiu-jitsu. We don't need to see you in the UFC anymore. Moving down the card to the main event of the prelims, Matt Frevola versus Drew Dober. I wanted to switch my pick for this fight. Tapology locks the second the event starts. I picked Drew Dober. I wanted to switch to Matt Frevola. I just thought Drew Dober relies on his chin and his power far too much, and Matt Frevola was a decently technical striker and has good power. Drew Dober came out, was pressuring him, landing some decent shots. Matt Frevola was landing some good shots. Landed a nasty power punch, dropped Drew Dober. Drew Dober looked out when he hit the ground, then kind of woke up. Matt Frevola landed some ground and pound. Referee steps in. Some people were saying it was an early stoppage. Drew Dober jumped up and started complaining. If anything, I thought it was a tad late. Matt Frevola probably landed 15 ground and pound shots, heavy ground and pound shots. I have no problem with the stoppage. I thought, if anything, it was a hair late. Solid win for Matt Frevola. Drew Dober gets stopped. You can't rely on your power constantly and your chin constantly. It's going to get exposed eventually. It's not a style that can have longevity at the highest level. And Matt Frevola looks like he's putting it all together. He looks like he could be a guy that could be eventually, kind of creeping up to that top 15. Drew Dober was ranked at one point in time. He's not now, but he was. I think Matt Frevola, his next fight should be someone to get him potentially into that top 15. A lot of people counted him out against Ottman and Zaitar. A lot of people counted him against Drew Dober. And he went out there and he knocked out Drew Dober in the first round. Phenomenal performance. And he had to deal with some adversity because Drew Dober was just pressing. And he caught him, clipped him, was good defensively, avoiding some of those big shots of Drew Dober, and put him out in the first round. I know it was a TKO, but he hurt him badly when he dropped him. I have no problem with the referee stepping in. Moving down the card, Kennedy Nzechukwu versus Devin Clark. Crazy fight. First round, Kennedy Nzechukwu landed the better shots, landed some good elbows in the clinch. Devin Clark hurt him with like a right hand in the first round. But then in the second round, Kennedy Nzechukwu was landing some good shots on the feet. Devin Clark kind of shot in on a takedown. Ends up getting guillotined and choked out cold in the second round. John Jones, Lyoto Machida style. And solid win for Kennedy Nzechukwu. Not really, but you get my point. Solid performance nonetheless. Gets a win. I know Annick's talking about him getting ranked. I don't know if he necessarily belongs in the rankings, but I guess when you have Jimmy Crute in the ranking, I guess Kennedy Nzechukwu does belong in the rankings. Moving down the card, I guess we might as well talk about every single fight on the card at this point. Khaos Williams versus Rolando Bedoya. This was a close fight. You had Khaos Williams just charging forward, looking to land big shots. This was a fight that honestly could have went either way. It was a split decision. I thought Khaos Williams took round 1, and then I think I had Bedoya winning round 2, and I had Bedoya winning round 3, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember specifically, but one of the rounds, and I think it was round 3, I could have saw going either way. And I had no problem, depending on where the scorecard went, I really had no problem with it. It was split decision Khaos Williams, split decision Rolando. I really didn't have a problem. Khaos Williams, not a style that's going to have longevity in the UFC at the highest level. He just walks forward, spamming hooks, looking for knockouts. I'm surprised he didn't get KO'd in this fight. Rolando looked good. He came in on short notice as well. Looked very good. I don't think his stock goes down with this loss. Solid loss for him. And honestly, I think Rolando Bedoya comes out looking better than Khaos Williams after this fight, because Khaos was just charging in. Even though he got the split decision, I think Bedoya looked far more skilled in this fight. Moving down the card, Virna Jandiroba versus Marina Rodriguez. Marina Rodriguez got dominated in the grappling. She's old, and that Amanda Lemos KO, I guess, sent her over the hill. I never want to see Marina Rodriguez fight again. She's never going to be a contender again. She got dominated by Virna Jandiroba in the grappling, had nothing to offer. Virna Jandiroba didn't do a whole lot of damage, but she got the job done. I thought it was a clear... Actually, I thought it was a 29-27. So I guess that wouldn't be total domination because... Or actually, no, wait. I had it a 29-28 for Virna Jandiroba. Because the third round, Marina Rodriguez, I thought she stole it with like 4 or 5 up kicks at the end. Virna Jandiroba did no damage in the third round. So I thought Marina Rodriguez took the third round. Moving down the card, Parker Porter, the GOAT, versus Braxton Smith. Cut Braxton Smith immediately. Dude got gassed after like 35 seconds. I'm convinced right now I could step in against Braxton Smith and take him out. Honestly, he threw a couple haymakers, gassed immediately. Parker Porter ended up taking him down and just beating him up on the ground. He literally could not move. I think he ended up having him full mounted. It was like a 3/4 mount maybe. Just beating the crap out of him. Braxton Smith does not belong in the UFC. Parker Porter gets the job done. But what can you really say about it? Braxton Smith threw haymakers for about 15 seconds, and then he said, you know what, I'm done. I'm done. So Parker Porter gets the job done. Solid win, I guess, but not really. Moving down the card, Ikram Aliskerov versus Phil Hawes. Phil Hawes looked good early. Looked like he was exposing Ikram. Landing good shots, moving forward. Ikram catches him with the head kick. I think Phil Hawes was hurt from it, but tried to hide it. Then boom, you had a crisp 1-2 from Ikram. Just sleeps Phil Hawes. Solid win. But Phil Hawes is kind of chinny nowadays. So I still want to pump the brakes on Ikram. You know, I know a lot of people are saying, oh, he's going to be This elite of the elite. He fought Hamza Chimaev and had a competitive fight with him before. We got to pump the brakes on him. He was getting pieced up by Phil Hawes early. He won the fight, looked good, but we have to pump the brakes on him. We can't elevate him like too crazy off of this win. I forgot who he called out after this fight. I cannot remember for the life of me. He called out somebody after this fight. I cannot remember. We'll talk about that in a future stream or video. Moving down the card, Claudio Ribeiro versus Joseph Holmes. Holmes almost gets finished in the first round, gets full mounted by the end of the first round, beat up. Bell saves him. Second round, it looks like Ribeiro's kind of gassed. Ends up getting a takedown again. Ground and pounds him. Finishes him in the second round. Joseph Holmes needs to be cut from the organization as well. You know, I know I say this every fight. Maybe I need to start doing a video. Let me know down in the comments if you want a video. Who should be cut after blank? Whatever card it is, UFC 288. That's a video idea I just came up with here as I'm doing this post-fight. But yeah, Joseph Holmes looked horrible. And Ikram called out Bo Nickel. That's who he called out. I know I'm jumping off topic here from what I was talking about. But anyway, Joseph Holmes needs to be cut. Ikram called out Bo Nickel. I would love to see the fight. UFC's not going to do it. UFC's not going to do it in a million years. Bo Nickel has a fight with Tresean Gore. Maybe the UFC would think about doing it. I don't think they're giving Ikram Aliskerov in his next fight. Bo Nickel's calling out Hamza, calling out this guy, calling out that guy. Do not believe he's going to fight Ikram in his next fight. UFC won't allow it. Also, Matt Frevola called out Paddy Pimblett. Not going to happen either. Matt Frevola would absolutely steamroll Paddy Pimblett, pun intended, and dominate him in that fight and destroy Paddy Pimblett badly. And, you know, he even called out Paddy, said, you can't hide. You can't hide. You're in the UFC. Why are you hiding? So, embarrassed Paddy Pimblett tonight, in my opinion, because Paddy Pimblett won't say a word. Because guess what? He won't want to push the narrative of the fight happening. If he talks, if he opens his mouth, that starts pushing the narrative forward. The fans want to see the fight. But yeah, that does it. That does it for my UFC 288 post-fight. Let me know what you guys thought about all the fights. How did you score Aljamain Sterling versus Henry Cejudo? What did you think of Belal's performance? What did you think of Derek Clearly's scorecard, which was horrendous? And anything else I missed, let me know down in the comments. Do me a favor. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to like this video. And thank you so much for watching.